Hello everybody, GM, merhaba. It's good to be here in Istanbul. Thank you so much. Just trying to get set up here. I'm not seeing the notes yet. Some technical difficulties here, but we're just getting started. I think they're still on it. So yeah, how's Istanbul been so far? Yeah, all good? Amazing. We had a great talk yesterday, a great walk yesterday with Moonwalk Fitness. If you're not on Moonwalk Fitness, go on Moonwalk Fitness. It's the only thing I'll plug today. So I guess I'll just go ahead without my speaker notes. I did prepare this time, so let's move on. On August 12th, 2014, at about 5 a.m. in the morning, I wrote this commit message, adds MIT license. And at the time, I didn't know that this single action would completely change the course of my life and my career. Today, I want to tell you about how open source changed my life, what open source actually is. I want to tell you about why open source matters, especially in Web3. I will be debunking some myths around open source and why people are kind of afraid not to use it. But before all of that, let me introduce myself, please. I'm Beeman. I'm the founder of PubKey. I'm a senior software engineer and open source advocate, which is the whole reason I'm standing here today. I've been working in tech since the late 90s when a colleague of mine introduced me to a CD with Linux. That was my first introduction with open source. I've been in crypto since 2016, but I actually started working on it since 2021. Solana, for me, was the first blockchain that I can actually envision being integrated in consumer-grade apps. And the common saying is true, I came for the tech, I stayed for the community. So thank you guys, I guess. I won 2 Solana hackathons of the 3 that I participated in. If you check my X, you'll find a guide on how to win a hackathon. I'm a proud Island DAO citizen. So Island DAO is a group of degens and power users, and we like to get together on an island for about a month for a co-working, networking, and vibing event. And there's some alpha. Today there's a mint of our new NFT. I'm not here to shill it, but just gonna get you guys up to date with that. The mint of the NFT will allow you to get into our events, so it'll be your entrance tickets. So if you're interested in vibing with a bunch of people on an island, then I'd recommend you check that out. I'm also part of the Metaplex Grants Council, which is a part of Island DAO. So we hand out Metaplex grants to teams that build innovative stuff using technologies like Metaplex Core and MPL 404. We just finished our first cohort with a bunch of interesting teams, and if you're interested in joining the next one, hit me up and I'll guide you through how to create a successful application. Now, you might have used some of my apps that I've built. Who here has ever created an app with Create Solana dApp? Anybody out there? Amazing, at least one. I hope it was a great experience. So it's the fastest way to create new Solana dApps. It's a command you enter, it'll ask you a bunch of things, and you'll be up and running in a few minutes. It has about 1,200 weekly downloads, and it's the recommended way to create new Solana dApps. Just created a bunch of new templates, so please check it out if you're interested. The other new thing I've been working on is the wallet UI. Now that's kind of like the interface that you see in an app where you click like select wallet, you pick your wallet, and you interact with it. So this is all based on the new SDKs that we have, which are Solana Kit and Gil, which recently just launched. So let's go back to the story. Let's go back to the context. So 2014, I was sitting at my computer, and I had a pretty normal, stable job. I was doing mostly PHP at the time, building good old monolith apps. And the new hot thing at that moment was building single-page apps with Node.js and AngularJS. React was very young, was about a year old. It was not really something you'd typically recommend anybody to use at the time. And I played around with this tool. And the project that I wrote was a starter kit, unsurprisingly. I've been building starter kits for years. And it was like an administrative admin. So the project called Loopback Angular Admin. And it allowed you to quickly spin up a new project that you can basically use as the base of your CMS or your app. I used it, I built it as a learning opportunity for myself, and also as a way to easily spin up a new project. If I had some inspiration, I could just copy the project and start over again. Now, at some point during this time, the project got some shape and it was kind of looking good, and I decided to make it open source. And the reason I decided to make it open source was because if I wouldn't, it would probably be collecting dust at my laptop, just like hundreds of other projects, and I figured it might be useful to somebody. So at 5 a.m., I added the license, pushed it up to GitHub, and kind of forgot about it. Then, at some point, a few weeks later, I got an email, and some guy named Manu Chep opened a topic on my GitHub. I did not expect it. I didn't check the repo. I kind of already forgotten about it and moved on. But somebody was interested. They called it a fantastic app, and he was stuck. So I worked with this early contributor to figure out his issue. We got it working, etc., etc. And I checked the repo, and I had about 10 stars at the moment, which was, at that moment, totally new for me. So there was a little bit of traction, and this was interesting for me. But the main thing came a few months later when I received this email. I won't read it all, but there was this guy who was building a startup, and he used my Loopback Angular admin project to help bootstrap his new product. My mind was blown. I did not expect this, and I was quite honored, obviously. But he didn't just reach out for me to talk about this. They were actually looking for talent. So he was like, you have these specific skills, and we want to work with a guy like you who demonstrated the skills. Now, at the time, as I said, I had quite a steady job, and I wasn't really interested in other things besides what I was doing. I had some nice side gigs that would make me a bunch of extra money, so some programming on the side. And actually, I had a trip planned to Thailand a few weeks later, so I basically said, yeah, no, I'm not interested, and get back to me in January. Kind of playing hard to get, right? Well, after my trip, they got back to me, and they were really serious. So this was kind of a compliment, and I was like, okay, let's engage with these people. And we decided to work together for a couple of weeks to figure out how the dynamic went. I wanted to know if they were paying, because it was a US company, first time working abroad, so there were a lot of uncertainties. But in the end, it worked out. And about 8 months after I published this project to GitHub, I signed my contract with them, and that was basically the official start of my new life. So besides working on something that was actually started out as my passion project, I could work on the same code using the same tech. They also tripled my salary, which was amazing. And to top it all off, they allowed me to work remotely. So I finally could follow my dream to travel the world and do it. So in May of that year, I gave away all of my possessions to friends and family. I put my house on sale. I stuffed all of the things that I have left in this suitcase and backpack, and I started traveling the world. I've emigrated from the Netherlands. I've been living abroad ever since, and I hope to continue this lifestyle going forward. That's my talk. Welcome. Thanks to our TED Talk. I'm kidding. So what is actually open source? It's a term that's been often used by people here and there, but there's actually a specific definition. So if we check the definition in the dictionary, it says that it's software of which the original source code is made freely available and may be distributed and modified. Now, when we talk about making something freely available, there's typically two ways of having something free. It's either free as in free beer or free as in free speech. Whereas the one really talks about a tangible project that you'll get, all the swag here you'll receive is free. And the other one is more about freedom, right? It's about a bunch of permissions. The former is something that's temporary, probably. You'll consume it, you'll use it, you'll forget about it. The other is more long-lasting. It's more of a philosophical freedom. In free and open source software, the answer is mostly yes, it's both. It's both free to use, it's both free, you don't have to pay anything. But for me, the most important part is the freedom. When I use open source software, I got the freedom to take it, use it, modify it, adopt it, republish, rebrand, remix, and that for me gives a lot of freedom. I'm free to host it wherever I want. I don't have to depend on a vendor that needs to be online for me in order to use my service. So all of these things are freedoms that I gain by using this open source software. Now in a practical sense, it's actually fairly simple. Follow what I did. You create some software, you add a license, and you make it available. Now the interesting part here typically is number 2, adding the license. So open source software is not open source just by giving away. You actually need to add a license that tells people what they can do with it. So there's this organization, it's the Open Source Initiative. Apparently you can't see black on black, but that's this. And it's a foundation that maintains the open source licenses, and there's currently about 80 different open source licenses. They all have a bunch of different nuances of what you can and what you can do, but we can typically divide these into 2 groups. You have very restrictive licenses, like the GPL and the AGPL, and these licenses require you to open source your work. So if you take something and you derive something of it, you will need to publish it. In this license, you can also define or restrict what people can actually do with it. So you can have a license that prevents a big company from Amazon and Google to actually take your product and run it as a service. This is something that we've sadly seen a lot over the years, where Amazon or Google or Microsoft or any of the big companies, they take a product, run with it, and then the original author doesn't really have a leverage on this. So a more restrictive license can prevent these things. On the other side, we have more permissive licenses like the MIT or Apache license, which basically allow you to do anything. I publish most of my work under the MIT license, which means that you can take my source code, rebrand it, rename it, make it closed source, sell it, and I won't be able to do anything. And I don't really care, honestly. So this is, I think, an interesting thing to take into account. Whereas open source is a binary, you can say yes, it's open source or no. The conditions here are defined in the license, and you must add this license to your project. I recently had a guy reach out, I reached out to him on GitHub, I reached out to him on Discord because I saw his GitHub, and his code was interesting to me, but he didn't add a license. And he was like, well, you can just use it. I was like, yes, okay, that's great that you tell it, but you will actually need to define this in the project. Now, I'm a single dev shop, I don't have a legal team, but if you want your product to be used by any business that takes these things into account, you must add a license, otherwise they will not touch it. Make sure it's the OSI license, an OSI compatible license, so you know you're safe. Just putting the code out there won't cut it. Now, open source is great by itself, and the internet as it is today would not have existed in its form if it weren't for open source. People often forget about these things, but all of the things that power the actual internet, like the majority, is powered by open source. Don't have any specific numbers, but all of the underlying protocols that we can kind of forget about are all open. There's no proprietary component in all of these things. The proprietary stuff generally comes at a higher level. So this is important for the internet as a whole and the developer experience as a whole. Most developers use like 90% of their tools are open source, maybe not your editor, maybe not your AI, but all of the frameworks, languages, tools, everything's going to be open source. In Web3 specifically, I think this is even more important. And the reason I think it's more important is that in Web3, people often say that you own your data. And what that means is that your data is stored on a blockchain, and you're the one that can manage this data by interacting with your wallet. Now, while this is great in theory, we have to ask ourselves, is that enough? And I don't think it is. Because if your data is on this blockchain, but you don't have a way to interact with it, there's no front end, there's no UI, then it's literally just an array of bytes. It's just a bunch of data, it's useless. So I think we should expect from our application developers to also open source the rendering layer, as I like to call it. So the little layer on top that allows you to interact with your platform, especially when this app is keen about storing your data and they're promoting it. And you as a developer, the developers here, I think it's also good to be able to set a standard. And if you're in a team, you might not be in the decision to open source it, but I'll hopefully give you some tools to help and convince the people you work with that open sourcing is probably the way to go for most of the projects out there. So let's go to debunking the myths. There is always a lot of FUD and fear, uncertainty, doubt about it. A lot of people are scared, but also a lot of people don't really know how it works. Now, I'm kind of known as the guy that asks the annoying question, like, what's your open source strategy? This comes back every time. People tell me they recognize me for talking about open source. Yesterday, somebody was like, yeah, you were fudding me about something on Twitter. I was like, yep, I asked you, when are you going to open source? And the excuses of not to do it, of why not to open source, are typically coming down to the same stuff. The easiest and most easy to debunk myth, the most common and easiest to debunk myth is someone will steal my idea. I'm making it easy for my competitors and they'll just run with it and go with my idea. The reality is actually that this is not at all the case. If you think about it, the software itself, the code, is hardly ever what gives you the competitive advantage. Things that are giving you a competitive advantage is basically you, because your team, have a passion. You started this project, you have an idea. But that's what got you here. But besides that, you also have a long-term vision. You have ideas of the project way beyond where you go. You have a brand, you have a reputation, you have trustworthiness by creating something. By building and supporting a tool, you build this trust and reputation. You might have an ecosystem of users, you might have integrations. The more common the name, the more easy it is to get your project integrated in an app. And the list goes on and on. There's marketing, business development, content creation, support, collaboration, sponsorship, governance, all things that you can build around your software project that actually give you the competitive advantages. Now, I can do a little mind game here, and let's say I'm going to fork Metaplex and call it Betaplex. Now we can figure out how successful this venture is going to be. So I'm going to be able to do this. I'll claim the name. I'll register the domain. It's where a lot of people think the success starts. So I register it and I start renaming. Now by the time I'm done catching up, understanding all of these things, doing all that, the Metaplex team is already 10 steps ahead, right? Because they have a big team of chats. They're all 10x developers. These people have a BD arm. They have big amounts of money. And this is all things that I have to figure out myself. And if I'm just one guy and I don't really add something to it, why would even somebody bother? Metaplex is very much a household name in our ecosystem. Nobody ever got fired for picking Metaplex. It's widely supported by wallets, NFT marketplaces, and other tools. And me and my Betaplex would have to bag support, and they'll probably ask, why? Just use the thing. This is their competitive advantage, and this is why the myth is easily debunked. It's just not the case. Now, if you build something so specifically, or it is the case, okay, you might have something there, but for 99% of the cases, this is not it. You can freely give away the software, and you won't open source your community, your vision, your passion, etc. This is also what enables Metaplex to give away their software for free, right? They're not giving away their competitive advantage. So the reality is, it's way easier for me to actually start contributing to Metaplex, which I did, and luckily stuff got accepted. And that way, we have best of both worlds. I don't have to manage with all of that stuff. They can do their own stuff. I got my contributions landed, and we all together make the world a better place. Now, another classic myth is, if I give away my software for free, I won't be able to make money. Now, the slides are not big enough to list all of the companies that are successful, but the devs here know most of the tools of most of the successful open source company. They also run a successful business. Things you can think about making money are, for instance, you can host the software for them. WordPress, the biggest platform on the internet, is a key example of this. You can download WordPress, but if you just want to have a blog, you probably go to wordpress.org, sign up, create an account, and run your blog. Nothing to worry about. The nice thing about it is you still have the freedom that if some point WordPress changes their conditions, you can take all of the stuff and host it yourself. Funny thing is here, I launched PubKey Link, which is a Discord verification service. And it's open source and self-hostable. And I thought, awesome, people can self-host it. The funny thing is, the one question that people ask me is, do you host it as a service? So the reality is, people are not really that interested in it being open source. People want convenience. They'd rather send $50 my way each month than actually going into the hassle of configuring a server, having to worry about backups and all of that things. Another angle of making money is that you can add additional service. A common example is Red Hat Enterprise Linux. You can download it for free, but if you're working in a company, they want to check off that you have support. Like, that's something legal, they must do it for compliance. So there's a whole area of making money here. You can provide consultancy or training. You can build additional customizations. Again, with PubKey Link, I got it out there, and 2 teams already have paid me money to integrate something in the project. And they donate to open source. I make a bit of money, which allows me to work on it, and the tool gets better as an example. A last interesting thing that we have specifically in open source, if you're building a protocol, you can add protocol fees. So just siphon off a little amount of all the transactions, put it in your wallet, and that's what charges for the usage. So with a little bit of creativity, you can see that you can actually make money using open source. The last myth I want to touch on is that if I open source my software, I'll lose control. Well, this is not really true. We already went over the licenses, and the license defines how you maintain ownership, and it defines how your code is used and modified. Like, you don't have to give it away MIT license as I do. You can just add conditions. There's nothing wrong with that. In addition, contributions are optional. If somebody comes into your project and they decide to restructure the whole thing because they see it's a better way, you don't have to accept it. If you don't agree, you can tell this person and you say, fork the project and do it yourself. And if somebody does, you still remain control over the original work, and you'll still be in the same spot. To sum it up, as the maintainer of the software, you decide how it will move forward. So, open source, I think, is your gateway to opportunity. With this simple act a few years ago, I totally changed my life. It led to a new job, a new lifestyle, and opportunities I never imagined. And eventually, it all ended up to me standing here in front of you today. And the main thing I want you developers to take away is that the same thing can happen to you. So why open source? It's about freedom and growth. It's about learning, innovating, customizing without limits. It's about being part of a community and collaborating with people where you're built with like-minded people. It's about visibility and impact. It allows you to showcase your work and leave a mark on the world. And really, as a dev, your GitHub profile is your CV. If I'm looking for talent, first thing I check is their GitHub profile. Now, I've worked with people that are really bad devs that had an impressive profile, so it's not a guarantee, but there's definitely something there. It's a portfolio where somebody can show their skills, their passion, their expertise, and it tells a story. It shows you what people care about and what they're capable of. It's an asset that that opens doors, collaboration, and it gives you a certain authority. So I'd invite you all to take the leap, start with something small, right? Fix a small bug, write some documentation, or contribute to a project you like and you use, and then you can build bigger from there. Create your own projects and invite others to collaborate. Create a starter kit. If there's something you find yourself doing all over again, abstract it, clean it up, add a license, and run with it. Every contribution counts, and every commit is a step forward to your future. Thanks, everybody. Oh, that was my talk. Thank you so much.